In many relationships, the early stage feels simple. Interest is clear, expectations are low, and emotional risk is limited. This is where people who pull away when things get serious can seem the most confusing, because everything often looks fine until commitment, vulnerability, or future planning enters the picture. The change usually shows up in observable behaviors rather than dramatic statements. Communication becomes less consistent. Plans get shorter term or harder to confirm. Affection drops, becomes intermittent, or feels on and off. When topics like exclusivity, meeting friends or family, moving forward, or defining the relationship come up, they may respond with distance instead of clarity. What makes this pattern psychologically important is that it often appears without a major conflict. The trigger isn't always an argument. It can be the perception of increased permanence, responsibility, or emotional exposure. Pulling back can function as a pressure release valve, creating space to reduce internal stress. This doesn't automatically mean they lack feelings. It means seriousness can activate avoidance-based coping, where distance feels safer than deeper closeness. Pulling away isn't always a dramatic exit. In many cases, it's a gradual shift in availability and engagement that's easy to feel but hard to prove. A person may still respond, still see you, and still say the right things, but the overall direction changes. Less initiative, less consistency, less emotional presence. One common version is the slow fade. Texts become shorter or delayed. Calls happen less. Plans move from specific to vague. We'll see. I've been busy. Let's play it by ear. They might stop proposing dates, stop following up, or show up inconsistently. Nothing is explicitly ended, but the relationship stops building. Another version is the pushback. When closeness increases, they create distance more actively. They may bring up needing space, become more critical, or pick conflicts that justify withdrawing. Sometimes they suddenly reevaluate the relationship right after a milestone, after an intimate weekend, a deep conversation, or talk about the future. A key sign is timing. The distancing reliably appears when things become more defined. Labels, commitment, routine, meeting friends/family, long-term plans. The behavior functions less like disinterest and more like a pattern of regulating discomfort by reducing intimacy. For some people, the problem isn't intimacy in general. It's what intimacy implies. As a relationship becomes serious, it tends to bring more expectation, more visibility, and more consequences. You're no longer just spending time together. You're becoming emotionally relevant to each other's future. That increase in stakes can activate stress responses. From a psychological standpoint, pulling away can function as a regulation strategy. If closeness triggers anxiety, pressure, or a sense of losing control, creating distance reduces those sensations quickly. The person may not be consciously deciding to sabotage the relationship. They may be responding to an internal alarm system that interprets commitment as risk. The risk can take different forms. Risk of dependence. If I need you, I'm not safe. Risk of exposure. If you see the real me, you might reject it. Risk of constraint. If this becomes official, I lose freedom or identity. Risk of pain. If I get attached, I can be hurt. In that framework, seriousness becomes a trigger because it signals permanence. Even positive steps, future talk, deeper vulnerability, meeting important people, can feel like points of no return. Pulling away provides immediate relief, even if it creates long-term instability. So the distancing is not always about lack of interest. It can be the nervous system choosing the fastest path back to emotional control. Less closeness, less intensity, less perceived threat. A useful way to understand this is attachment theory, specifically avoidant-leaning patterns. This doesn't mean someone doesn't want love. It means they learned, usually through early experiences, that closeness is unreliable, intrusive, or emotionally costly. As a result, they tend to rely on themselves first, keep emotional needs private, and feel safest when they have space and control. In everyday life, avoidant-leaning people can look highly functional, independent, calm under pressure, not overly reactive. But relationships introduce a different kind of pressure, because seriousness increases expectations, emotional dependence, and the sense that someone can affect you. When that pressure rises, an avoidant-leaning person may cope by downshifting intimacy rather than leaning into it. This is where deactivation comes in. Deactivation is a set of strategies, often automatic, that reduce attachment feelings to lower. Vulnerability, it's less like, I'm trying to hurt you, and more like, I need to get my nervous system back under control. Deactivation can show up as cognitive distancing, focusing on flaws, questioning compatibility, feeling suddenly unsure. Behavioral distancing, staying busy, replying less, avoiding deep conversations. Emotional distancing, less affection, more neutrality, going numb. The key point is timing. These strategies activate when the relationship becomes more defined. Labels, future talk, increased closeness. The person may still care, but their default regulation method is to create distance so they can feel safe, capable, and in control again. Pulling away often looks like a behavior problem, but underneath it is usually a fear problem. The fears aren't always conscious, and they're not always rational in the moment. They're often learned expectations about what closeness leads to. One common fear is loss of autonomy. Seriously, relationships can feel like a narrowing of options. More routines, more compromise, more accountability. If someone equates closeness with being controlled or losing themselves, distancing becomes a way to preserve identity. Another fear is being fully seen. Seriousness increases emotional exposure, your history, your needs, your flaws, your patterns. For someone who carries shame or a belief that they're too much or not enough, deeper intimacy can feel like an evaluation they might fail. Pulling away reduces the chance of being examined. There's also fear of abandonment, which can look like the opposite of what people expect. Some individuals withdraw, not because they don't care, but because caring raises the stakes. If they anticipate rejection eventually, they may create distance first to feel less dependent and less vulnerable to loss. Finally, there's fear of repeating the past. If someone's earlier relationships included betrayal, instability, emotional unpredictability, or inconsistent caregiving, seriousness can activate old associations. This is where it goes wrong. Even when the current relationship is healthy, the body may react as if danger is approaching. In each case, pulling away isn't the goal. Relief is the goal. Distance is simply the tool that produces fast relief at the cost of connection, clarity, and stability. When one person pulls away, the relationship often shifts into a predictable feedback loop: pursue, withdraw. It's not a personality flaw on either side. It's a pattern that forms when two nervous systems respond differently to the same stress. The withdrawing person regulates stress by increasing distance. They may think, if I get space, I'll feel clear again. The pursuing person regulates stress by increasing connection. They may think, if we talk and reconfirm things, I'll feel stable again. The problem is that each response triggers the other. Distance creates uncertainty, and uncertainty increases anxiety. Anxiety increases efforts to reconnect. More questions, more attempts to clarify, more emotional intensity. But to the withdrawer, that intensity can feel like pressure or loss of control, so they retreat further. The pursuer then feels even more unsafe and escalates again. Over time, the relationship becomes less about two people moving closer and more about managing reactions. One person chasing security, the other chasing relief. That's why the cycle can make even a good connection feel exhausting. This is also why simple advice like just communicate doesn't always work. If communication is experienced as pressure, the withdrawing person will avoid it. If distance is experienced as rejection, the pursuing person will intensify. Unless the pattern is named and handled deliberately, seriousness keeps triggering withdrawal, and withdrawal keeps triggering pursuit. If someone pulls away when things get serious, the instinct is often to close the gap quickly, ask for reassurance, push for clarity, or increase effort. The problem is that chasing usually increases pressure, and pressure often increases withdrawal. What tends to backfire? Interrogating the distance, repeated "what's wrong?" conversations that escalate intensity, overfunctioning, doing all the planning, all the emotional labor, all the repairing, self-erasing, abandoning your needs to keep them from leaving, trying to win security, proving your value instead of asking for consistency. What helps more is a combination of calm clarity and boundaries. Name what you're observing without accusing. When we get closer or talk about the future, I notice you become less responsive. Then ask a specific question that makes the situation measurable. Do you want to keep building this with me? And if so, what does space actually look like? Structure reduces ambiguity. Agree on concrete expectations. How you'll communicate. During space, when you'll reconnect. What topics can't be avoided indefinitely. At the same time, protect your own stability. You can be patient with someone's fear, but you don't have to accept chronic inconsistency. The key distinction is this. Healthy space comes with communication and return. Disappearing comes with ambiguity and repeat cycles. Pulling away can come from a real fear response, but it still creates a real impact. The most useful question isn't, do they have a reason? It's, do they take responsibility for the pattern? Growth looks like awareness, repair, and consistent effort, not repeated distancing with no change. Your power is staying grounded in what you need: clarity, stability, and follow-through. You can empathize without chasing,